In this chapter, we will demonstrate how you can create a melancholic or perhaps a relaxed mood or feel. Of course, there are many possibilities open to us. The first thing we could mention would be the harmonic element. Then, you can add individual instruments over time, for example the effect of starting with lower instruments, and bringing in the higher instruments later in order to have harmonic growth and depth. Then, of course, there is movement, and how much movement we can incorporate in our piece of music, but still keep the music melancholic or calm. The whole point is to avoid falling back on power and trailer music type effects, but to create movement and growth whilst retaining a mellow atmosphere. Of course, dynamic elements are central to this as well, as if we keep everything too quiet, it will become boring. We need movement. So in order to demonstrate this, I'll start by using a chord progression to show how we can create a very subtle and delicate mood. So if we play it, you'll understand what I mean straight away. So here is an example that has already been prepared. Having listened to it, you will have noticed that we are using a choir patch, and this is from the Orchestral Essentials 2 library. This is not the second version of the Orchestral Essentials library that we have previously used, however. The normal Orchestral Essentials library contains all the basic instruments that you will need to create orchestral arrangements, whereas the Orchestral Essentials 2 library builds on that library. We can see that in the first library, we have all the standard instruments required. If we look in the Orchestral Essentials 2 library, however, we can see that there is a choir section, and we have taken a mixed orchestra and choir patch. If we listen to this patch, we can hear that it is a very atmospheric patch, with the strings and choir creating a classic mystical sound. In my case, I am using a foot controller to control the overall dynamics of the patch, and you can hear different elements being brought in using a controller. Of course, I could use the modulation wheel, but with this type of instrument I will often play with both hands, so in those cases it makes sense to have a foot controller controlling the dynamics. If we now look in the sequencer at what I played, we can see that it is basically a relatively simple chord progression, but it creates a very atmospheric mood. This type of chord progression is not random, but is also not typical in many ways. but there are certain techniques or exercises that we use to create this kind of mood, and we can look at these in the following chapter.